Well, go on, everybody. Lennox here from S123 Trader. This is the weekly playbook outlook for the week of July 4th to July 9th. Taking a look at what's setting up for the major currencies, futures, and the stock market indices. Hope everybody's doing well and are safe. We'll dive right in, starting off with the Australian dollar. I'm on the weekly time frame, and as previously analyzed, we are now in that downward mode for this instrument. And again, I point out the head and shoulders that started this move, and of course, a break of that neckline right around this point uh, would propel uh, the Aussie dollar to the downside. What's forming right now? We're in a move that's going to take us down into the support area in the long term. Of course, it's not going to just do it in a straight line. So something like that will play out and take us down. But that will be the trajectory for the Australian dollar. That's on the weekly. So it's going to take a while to play out. On the daily, we can see that that's setting up as well. And we're in that move to the downside. So any pullbacks uh, is just opportunity to sell. Okay, so you sell on any pullbacks to the high to continue the move to the downside for Aussie. All right, so let's take a look at Bitcoin and go to the weekly time frame. Bitcoin, as we've seen, is in that area of uh, turbulence where it's come back down to a previous support area and is now fighting to make a decision on which direction to go. Right now, it's pushing. It had pushed back to the upside, but when we get a little closer on the daily, we'll see what's going on. So dropping to the daily time frame, and this too is similar to Aussie because we do indeed have head and shoulders here as well, and then a break of a breach of the neckline dropped us down considerably, as you can see. And that's similar type of setup, and we're down in this area. So my expectation is for price, of course, to continue to the downside, but if we're in a congested area right now at this point. So that's what I'll be looking at overall. Again, this is on the weekly, so it'll take a while. On the daily, now we can see what's playing out. We had a big drop, and now we're in a sideways pattern. And the expected move after all this congestion, we could certainly come back up. We could even go a little higher, but eventually we're going to drop to the downside. So right now in the short term, going into this week, we'll be looking at further weakness, maybe a bit of strength initially, but any moves to the upside will be opportunities to sell. Okay, similar to Aussie. Let's take a look at crude oil on the weekly. Crude oil is sitting right at a very key area, and it's looking to break through to new highs, and I think that's it's going to do that and continue its strong move to the upside. So continued strength into crude oil going into this week. That's what the call on crude oil will be, as I don't see anything stopping this at this moment in time. Taking a look at the Canadian dollar, we'll go to the weekly. Canadian dollar also after a big huge move to the upside is now coming back to earth, as it were, and heading back down. And on the daily, well, we can see that playing out with a move right now. It more than likely will do something like this before it continues down, similar to what it did over here. So something like that in that trajectory. But overall, a weakness in the Canadian dollar, and into this week, any moves to the upside in Canadian dollar will also be opportunities to sell. We'll take a look at the US dollar, and on the weekly, US dollar is looking to continue its move to the upside. Will it Will it continue? Let's take a closer look on the daily. It's had quite the run. So um, what I can see here, the big strong move we could be done at this point. We could be heading back down, and what also could happen here as well is that it could do something like this, form a head and shoulders, and then drop back down again. So that's totally possible. This is on the daily, so I'm expecting possibility of a further move to the upside before it does all that. So I'm just going to go in a little closer on the 4 hour, and now we can see it a little clearer. So um, we've had a move off the bottom to this level. So my expected trajectory is one more push to break or challenge this high before we turn around to the downside. So strengthen the US dollar, at least in the short term, before it starts to turn back. All right, let's take a look at the euro. And on the weekly time frame for the euro, okay, the euro is doing the opposite of what the US dollar is doing and is on its way down right now, as you can see. So on the daily, you can see that it also has a similar setup, it's just the opposite of what the US dollar did, dropping down and now looking um, to come back. But I think it might have one more push to the downside before it does that. So continued weakness. If the US dollar continues this push to the upside, we can expect the euro to continue pushing to the downside. Okay, so the Swiss on the weekly, uh, it too, and you can see these head and shoulders as they set up. There's another, and the neckline for this is right in here. It's broken through, so we could expect further weakness in the Swiss franc as the week unfolds, and dropping to the daily, we'll see that more clearly. So we've had quite the drop, and it's looking to push back, but we could also have another drop down. So further weakness, more than likely. Short-term strength, perhaps, but any moves to the upside will be opportunities to sell. We'll take a look at gold on the weekly. Gold, it too is found some weakness. It's still struggling, trying to go higher. On the daily, you can see that struggle as it did push up quite nicely over the last few weeks, but now has turned to the downside. Is it ready to turn around? I don't think so. I think this is going to continue down one more time. So um, any moves to the upside here also will be opportunities to sell. Okay, so Japanese yen on the weekly. You can see on the weekly, very weak overall. It's been just going downhill, and I don't see anything stopping this from continuing down. It's still very weak. We've just broken this lower level, but it's still weakness to come in going into this week. Any pullbacks to the upside, opportunities to sell. Okay, so that theme, you can see there's a theme here this week. So let's see if it continues with the others. This is New Zealand, and just like the Aussie, head and shoulders again, and neckline, and breach of the neckline, and we are on our way down. So continued downside for Aussie and New Zealand dollar. Looking on the daily, you can see same type of setup as the Aussie. So we had that nice move down. Now looking to set up for continued moves to the downside. We can go sideways in here for a bit more before it drops. So we don't know exactly how it's going to set up, but continued weakness overall. So any pullbacks to the upside are opportunities to buy or to sell. Sorry. The Mexican peso. Let's try it again. Mexican peso on the weekly. Okay, Mexican peso is right at a very strong resistance point, and it's trying to break through. Will it break through this week? It's totally possible. You can see it's trying valiantly to break to new highs, and it just might do that. A strong U.S. dollar going forward might propel this in the short term down, but in the longer term, as the US dollar weakens, this could certainly move higher against the US dollar. So it's in a very critical point, at a critical point. So It looks like it wants to continue going higher, and I would stay in that direction with Mexican peso. Taking a look at the British pound on the weekly, okay, it too could be setting up a kind of a quasi head and shoulders here, so we could get a push back up. That's totally possible. But right now it looks quite weak, and we could certainly continue down. And if the U.S. dollar continues its strength, then that's what my expectation would be for the British pound to continue sliding to the downside one more time. But it's also reached a critical point here. So like I say, this could bounce. So it could do a little differently than what the euro is doing. But right now it's trying to push back to the upside, at least in the short term, to retrace this final move here. Okay, so we could get something like that, and then it could drop again. So we'll see how that plays out. But in the short term, continued a little bit of strength perhaps for the British pound. But if the US dollar goes strong, this is going to, all bets are off, and this should continue down. Okay, so silver on the weekly. Silver, it, like gold, has been struggling. You can see it's been in quite a battle here, up and down, and now the last time was down. Now it's trying to push back to the upside. On the daily, it is also, again, a big drop, trying to fight back up, but I think there's still more weakness to come, just like in gold. So any moves to the upside here, as you know, again, that theme is holding out, and any moves to the upside are opportunities to sell in silver. Let's take a look at the Russell 2000. Now it's had quite a run. It's sitting up right up at the top of a very strong resistance level and trying to break through to new highs. You can see that it's snaking along this level, but I would expect after some weakness, I would still expect further moves to the upside to break these highs. But right now, it's in a strong resistance zone, like we can see here, and so short-term weakness, but long-term strength overall. The Dow is doing similar. It's sitting at a very critical point, as you can see on the weekly. On the daily, it's trying to push through to new highs. So any pullbacks, opportunities to buy on the US 30, US 500, the S&P has broken to new highs like I expected from last week. So it continued its strong move. It's still looking really strong. So I'm not going to bet against the US 500 whatsoever. It's still looking quite strong going forward. Okay, and finally, the U.S. Technology Group, also like the U.S. 500 and Dow, still very strong. Although it's pretty long in the tooth now, you can see it's gone. It has gone quite a ways, and it is getting a bit long in the tooth and kind of going. It's this angle looking more like 60 degrees, 70 degrees, getting a bit you know this could get exhausted here. So we'll see how it plays out, but continued strength going into this week. We could even drop down lower to take a closer look at it just to kind of see what it's doing. And dropping down the 4 hour, you can see that it's still very strong. On the 1 hour, still pushing. Now you can see that it's kind of pulling back a little bit, but I expect further strength and more new highs, record-breaking moves to the upside for the rest of the week. So that's a look at what's setting up for all these majors and indices. Profitable trading to everyone. Be safe. I'm done now. Thank you.